Alright, so welcome back to Paranormal Bad Bitches. Today is a special day. It is my 25th birthday, and I feel really old, but not old yet, and it's kind of a weird age to be. I don't like it. So, today we are going over the Conjuring, okay? Now, this is kind of like a crazy house, and like we eventually plan on going here, but it's gonna take a lot of working up to get there because this house is so scary, and I don't like it. So to start, we are going over the history of the house. So the land itself is known to be haunted. It's dated back to as far as the 1600s, as the tribes occupied the land before Roger Williams purchased the land. Now, if you don't know who Roger Williams is, he was the one who established Providence Plantations in 1636. And basically, he was the one that kind of started selling the land off to preserve it. He wanted people who would follow his rules and kind of be like, hey, we're going to do it this way. That way the land doesn't get, over nutritioned or whatever it's called, and that way we can make it better, preserve it. And he ended up selling parts of the land to families all over the area, and some of the families stayed there for hundreds of years, which is like crazy to think about. The house was built in 1736, 40 years before the Declaration of Independence was signed, which I thought was kind of cool. But, ow. Now, the house has been owned by 5 families before the Perrons purchased the property, so a lot has taken place on the land itself. And the house itself as well. I mean, there's just so much that went on. The house itself has survived multiple storms, wars, generations of wear and tear, and it's still standing like it was, in 1736. Now, Roger Perron and his wife, Carolyn, purchased the home in the winter of 1970, and there was 200 acres on the property, which offered plenty of space for them to raise their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cynthia, and April. Now, they did end up moving out 10 years later in June of 1980. Now, some of the things that the Perron family started to experience almost immediately after they had moved in, it started small. Carolyn would notice objects missing, out of place, or she would hear sounds in rooms when nobody was home. I think one of the examples was like scratching on like a teapot or something. Some of the children began to speak to the spirits visiting them in the night, and one was named Oliver Richardson, and he befriended April. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen the actual movie. Basically how they depicted it there was like that toy that would spin, and then if you hold it up, you can see him standing behind you in the mirror that spins. Carolyn Perron was finding neatly piled of dirt in the middle of rooms that she had just cleaned up, and no one else would be home, which is like, no thanks. Sorry, I wouldn't do that. Meanwhile, Andrea was being tormented nightly by a malevolent female spirit with a bent neck. And every time I read this, I think of the bent neck lady from Hill House. And I don't know if you guys have seen that series, but if you like a scary series, I highly recommend The Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor. They are so good, and the main actor in the Bly Manor is fire. Don't worry, my husband knows I have a crush on her. Andrea actually believes it was the spirit that wanted to possess her mother to kill her siblings. Now, Carolyn ended up looking up the history of the house, and she discovered that the house had been in the same family for 8 generations, and many of them died on the property, but in really mysterious ways. So, like, kids would, like, drown in a nearby creek, one was murdered, and a few hanged themselves in the attic. So, there was just a lot of, like, weird deaths that took place, all within the same family, and, like, I don't know, it's just crazy. Then she found Bathsheba, okay? And this is where it starts to kind of get crazy. Quick interruption. If you like this channel and you find yourself coming back, please subscribe and hit that notification button. If you like the video, please be sure to like it. And if you don't like the video, comment down below and tell us why. We're still learning, and I will take any advice and any criticism. Just try to be polite about it. Thanks. Bathsheba Sherman. It turns out there was an actual real person named Bathsheba Sherman who lived in the Perron's property in the mid-1800s. This is the only photo known to have been found of her on the property years before that the Perrons moved in. She was rumored to have been a witch who worshipped Satan, and she has also been rumored to be related to Mary Eastie. She was hanged during the Salem witch trials, which I want to do an episode on the Salem witch trials just because of how crazy they were. Like, I don't know. I feel like you could have just been too hot and they'd been like, witch. Witchcraft. There was evidence that she had been involved in the death of a neighbor's child, though the trial never took place. Some believe she actually murdered children in the 19th century. And when she had died, she actually was buried in the Baptist Cemetery, downtown Harrisville. Now, actual records of Bathsheba. There was a Bathsheba Thayer. She was born in 1812 and married to Judson Sherman in 1844, and they gave birth to a boy named Herbert. Records show that Judson Sherman died in 1881, which was supposedly another child from Bathsheba, and he apparently lived past 7. And her tombstone in the downtown Harrisville says that she died May 25th of 1885, which I would just like to say, and Lydia, don't hate me, but this is the day before Lydia's birthday. Now, the legend, so this is like hearsay, or he said, she said kind of stuff. The legend of Bathsheba Sherman. The legend says that she was later caught trying to sacrifice her son to Satan with a sewing needle. And like, I don't know if you guys know this, but sewing needles were a lot different than they are now. They're definitely not as small as they were. So I don't think it's like what you think, at least what I thought was like her like poking her son. No, it's an actual giant sewing needle. Basically, when she did that, she cursed all who dare to live on her land, and she supposedly climbed a tree and hanged herself. She was babysitting her neighbor's son when he mysteriously died, and then later established that that child's skull had been impaled with a small, fatal tool. Like, I don't know about you guys, but some people should just not have children. Bathsheba's son would never see his first birthday, as his mother stabbed him to death the week after he was born. And her husband caught her in the act as she vowed allegiance to the devil before climbing the tree and hanging herself in 1849. Now, this does kind of seem fake just because it contradicts the death on her tombstone. Considering that her tombstone says May 25th of 1885, and this supposedly took place in 1849, so it's a little hard. It just doesn't seem like it actually happened. Now, they were worried that it was Bathsheba that was actually tormenting their family, and the Perrons contact Ed and Lorraine Warren, which, if you don't know who Ed and Lorraine Warren is, educate yourself, because they're pretty historical, and in my opinion, they're just straight up legends. But I have all of their books, actually. There's Werewolf, Satan's Harvest, Ghost Hunters, something else that's covered by something, but all of their books are really good. I highly recommend them. I will post the Amazon link in the description below. Ed Warren was a World War II veteran and a former police officer who became a self-professed demonologist after studying the subject of his own, his wife, Lorraine, who claimed to be a clairvoyant and medium who could communicate with the demons that Ed discovered. Now, their two most famous cases, however, were heavily popularized by the Conjuring franchise, a series of movies that focused on Ed and Lorraine's experiences exorcising demons from two possessed families. Now, the movies seem overdramatic and kind of impossible to believe, but the Warrens maintain that all of the events depicted actually transpired. Though Ed died in 2006, Lorraine was actually a consultant on the film, and the film claims that she didn't let the directors take any more dramatic license than was necessary. Now, over the 10 years that the family lived in the house, the Warrens made multiple trips to investigate, and at one point, Lorraine conducted a seance to attempt to contact the spirits that were possessing the family. Now, during the seance, Carolyn Perron became possessed, speaking in tongues and raising from the ground in her chair. Her body was contorted into a ball, screaming, and she slammed against the floor with her head. Fallen unconscious, she did wake up, but it was herself. Now, they weren't actually able to perform the exorcism like the movie perceived. The exorcism has to be taken place by the Vatican or the church, whatever it was. After the seance, Roger kicked the Warrens out, worried about his wife's mental stability, and they only returned one other time, which was just to check up on Carolyn after the seance. According to Andrea, the family continued to live in the house due to financial instability until they were able to finally move out in 1980, which at this point the spirits were silenced and the haunting ceased, which I find kind of just kind of weird, you know, because like I feel like hauntings don't just stop, but I also have never been haunted, so I don't know. Andrea had actually written a book or two about her family's experience living in the house for the decade they lived there. She says, and I quote, "The things that went on there were just so incredibly frightening. It still affects me to talk about it to this day. Both my mother and I would as soon swallow our tongue than tell a lie. People are free to believe whatever they want to believe, but I know what we experienced," end quote. Which I get to some extent. I do think that your mind plays tricks on you. I don't entirely believe that everything they went through actually happened. I think some of it was like mind games. But there are some things that are hard to explain and hard to debunk, and that's the stuff that I do believe. Now, I don't know if Bathsheba was actually a witch. I actually believe that the Salem witch trials were just a whole bunch of fucking hocus pocus crap. I think that women were just really empowered and fighting against the men, and I think they just kind of took it out on them, but we can go into that when we do the Salem witch trials. I don't know. I don't really think Bathsheba has anything to do with it. I think the family that lived there for 8 generations, maybe, with the people that hanged themselves or drowned or got murdered. I don't think it was Bathsheba, though. So, it's hard to tell. So I know Bathsheba actually existed, but with the timelines not matching up with her deaths, it's really hard to depict whether she was actually a witch that worshipped Satan or not. And coming from someone who's actually trying to understand what they do and don't want to believe right now, it is hard to decide whether I believe she existed or not. But let me know down below what you guys think about her. And yeah. Well, that's all we have for today. If you have any stories or locations that you want us to research, let me know. If it's somewhere in the Midwest, we will probably try to actually go there. Now, keep in mind, we are going to the Stanley Hotel in July, and I am so excited. And let me know what you think. I mean, do you believe the story behind Bathsheba, or do you think it was made up, just trying to, you know, put a scary rap on the house? And don't forget to check out our podcast stories every Tuesday and Friday. They get posted, I believe, at 5 a.m., so you should be able to use them while you're at work. And thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening. This has been so fun so far. I'm so excited to see where this goes, and I just appreciate your guys' support so much. As little as we have so far, it means a lot. And I'm really excited to see where this goes. So, peace!